Hey folks, welcome back, or of course, welcome to Lone Pine Tarot for the first time if you're new here, and as I always say, thank you so much for joining me for our Pick a Card reading, and today's topic is all about the Akashic Records. So what we're going to do is ask your spirit guides to bring forth messages from the Akashic Records that are most important for you to hear right now at this step in your journey through life. So without further ado, let us pick our pile leaders to choose our messages with, using the Seed and Sickle Oracle today. I always love using this deck. It's very beautiful. So spirit guides, please guide us to the right cards. Thank you for our highest, best, good. Okay, I'm feeling drawn to this one right here. So we'll start here for pile number 1, pile number 2, and of course pile number 3. Let's unveil the pile leaders together. So for pile 1 over here on the left, your pile leader today is the Willow tree, or number 23 if you prefer to pick by number. For pile number 2, here in the middle, your pile leader today is the card of Citrus, or number 45. A lot of very vibrant, beautiful orange cards today. And last but not least, for our pile number 3 over here on the right, your pile leader is, oopsie, we're upside down, the card of Thistle with the number 37. So of course, quick refresher, pile 1 is Willow, pile 2 is Citrus, and pile number 3 is Thistle. But of course, as I always say, you're welcome to pause right here if you need more time to decide what pile you would like read for you. If you're new to Pick a Card readings and you want my suggestion for a method, or you just want to take a few nice, calm moments out of your busy day, please follow my voice right now for a meditative moment. So close your eyes and take in a deep, cleansing breath. Imagine light filling your lungs as you do so. Then hold it for just a few moments. Then when you breathe back out again, open your eyes and look at these 3 different cards and see where they're drawn first, most out of the 3. And I always say you'll kind of feel like, oh, this is the right one, down in your gut, or your intuition is another phrase we like to use, and that is the pile I recommend you choose. But whatever your method, as I always say, you can drop down to the description box below or the top pinned comment beneath the reading. Find the timestamp for your pile, and I'll see you in our chat about your important message from the Akashic Records. See you in your reading. Hello there, my wonderful pile number 1. Welcome to your Pick a Card reading today about an Akashic Records message from your spirit guides to you. And as you recall, you were drawn to the beautiful card of Willow, or number 23, as your pile leader. Now, when I look at the Willow card, the first thing I'm really drawn to is the emphasis on its flexibility in its branches. As we all know, willow trees are not rigid branched trees. Their branches kind of drape down and they kind of move along with the wind. They're almost kind of like a head of hair on top of the tree, instead of being, obviously like the typical rigid, hard branches that most have, right? So what I mean when I bring that up, pile number 1, is with Spirit's emphasis on this meaning of flexibility. I think what they want to talk to you today is about some sort of situation that has required you to be flexible. I don't know if recently you had some sort of plan in mind and the universe kind of threw you a complete 180, and it's like you've had to be flexible with that, or like you're wondering, well, how do I be flexible with this new wrench in my plan, or this Uno reverse card, as we might call it, that the universe has sent your way. Or in general, it could just be that recently you've been going through a lot of hard, difficult times that have required you to be more flexible than normal, okay? So maybe you've had to kind of be more flexible with your budget with things if it's been like economic hardship. Maybe it's been a relationship, romantic or platonic related thing that you've had to kind of be more flexible with your expectations with the relationship, or maybe because there's been so much tumultuous change in that area of your life, you've kind of had to bend other parts of your life around that particular situation. So really what, the key word is technically flexibility, but at the same time, pile number 1, I think adaptability is another good phrase to use with what your spirit guides want to talk to you about today with this Akashic Records message. And oftentimes with the Akashic Records, pile number 1, as I put your pile leader over here to the left, is they, as we all know, record the entire history of not just this life of ours, but also all of our past lives. So I get the feeling with this particular message that you have gone through past lives before with similar situations as to what you're going through right now. I mean, obviously, in all lives we live, there's hardships. There's times that we're needed to be adaptable and flexible. But I think in particular, whatever's going on right now, and we'll glimpse more into that with the tarot spread, that'll give us more concrete details, right? But whatever is going on right now, it's like an echo or a reflection of past life issues that you've had. Okay, so let's, speaking of, let's do that tarot spread now, as well as I'm going to draw one of the oracle decks for us. And we're going to see more about this life lesson and everything that you're going through, pile number 1. Okay, so spirit guides from the Akashic Records, please. Tell us more about this situation at hand. Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, I'm feeling drawn to this part of the deck, so we'll draw from the top there. Thank you, spirit guides. And then let's work with the Wild Harmonic Oracle too. And I feel like for a lot of you, intuitively, I'm hearing that this thing kind of came out of the blue. It's one of those monkey wrenches in life that you just did not expect. It's like things were going along just fine, and then all of a sudden this speed bump came out of the blue in the way, and you're like, what do I deal with? I mean, how do I deal with this now? Like, what am I supposed to do? So actually this reading, pile number 1, might be more of an advice reading, but we'll see. Okay, I'm feeling drawn to this one right here, and let's unveil that right now. Ooh, so we have a shadow card. Shadow of Fire. We have inflammatory response. Now I will, as I always do when I use this deck, read from the guidebook for this, because it's really, really well written, but let's do that right now, pile number 1. We'll talk about your tarot cards in a moment. So, from the Wild Harmonic, Shadow of Fire. Perfect, I flipped right to it. Inflammatory response. As the shadow consumes the driving will, blind, compulsive, aggression, but I'll reread that. As the shadow consumes the driving will, blind, compulsive aggravation erupts. So the meditation says, being a part of the problem rather than the solution, aggravating the situation because of a lack of self-control. A card that speaks to an unconscious pattern impulse to make things worse, usually to justify our perspective of how bad we think things are. Listening for and interpreting things in such a way that offends me, and then mirroring what I perceive with a secret impulse to escalate. It is no small task to de-escalate my responses, especially when I am feeling that an other has crossed a boundary or in some way attempted to impose upon me their reality. And the inquiry or question to ask yourself with this card is, in what ways can I keep from causing further dramatic escalation? So specifically, pile number 1, this card is about the way we react to the cards that we are dealt in life, especially when like it was saying, like, you know, a bad situation might come up, or you might come across somebody who has overstepped one of your boundaries recently. Maybe that's kind of that 180 monkey wrench I was just talking about. Maybe the problem is another person. And so you, very understandably, pile number 1, have been going through a situation recently that has just made you really irritated, really upset. 100% understandable, but because this card is Shadow of Fire, it's warning that sometimes we need to, when we come across frustrating situations like this, the most important thing we can do is to be aware of how we respond to it, especially verbally, because I mean, literally, when you look at this card, it's someone speaking with fire. Okay, they've had their head out of the flames, and flame is coming out of their mouth, almost like a dragon. And even if you look at their hair up here, I know it's supposed to be like flames, but kind of almost even looks like dragon horns too, like a dragon spouting fire. Like, I need to defend my own, I need to defend my hoard, my security, my resources, etc. And it's very possible, too, pile 1, that isn't necessarily you in the situation. That card might have come up because this is someone else recently that you've had to deal with. Now, with Akashic Records readings, pile number 1, as I said, past lives do come into play. It's very possible that this person has been kind of in your soul circle for multiple lives. Maybe oftentimes you kind of come across this person as a sort of rival in different lives, or someone that you tend to have a lot of arguments with, or someone that you tend to have a lot of kind of clashing ideas with, almost kind of like opposing forces. Rivals really is the main word coming through, but that might not apply to all of you specifically. But yeah, it's warning about how we deal with the hand that we're dealt when it comes to our inflammatory response, or coming across, or choosing to come across more in a cool, mild-mannered way. Let's look at your tarot cards. We have, speaking of fire, we have the Ace of Wands. Okay, so the Ace of Wands, and I'm just going to say this, pile number 1, and this might sound kind of weird. Sometimes the Ace of Wands can represent a time when someone is being a bit, what's the word? I can't say it for YouTube in the way that I want to. Not very nice. Okay, there you go. We'll put it the friendly, YouTube-friendly way, right? The Ace of Wands can mean someone that's kind of, it's almost kind of like someone coming along with a bat in their hand, or a wand, or a club, and literally just like trying to bash other people, okay? That can be sometimes, especially too with the ace being kind of something new or out of the blue, almost like this hand coming forth from the clouds. It can kind of seem like out of left field, like a reverse Uno card, a 180 from the universe. Where'd this come from? Okay. Let's look at your second card, because I'm curious. That'll give us some context. I don't know if it's necessarily you or the other person, or it could even be multiple people involved, pile number 1. But, and then we have Justice reversed. Okay. So what that tells me, pile 1, is that I think both parties are maybe kind of upset for obvious reasons. Like, when you get into any argument, obviously both sides are not very happy. And the reason why is because there's a feeling of injustice here. And I think, and I 100% understand you, pile 1, for this feeling, totally relate, can totally empathize. When things feel unjust to you, you might have a bit of an inclination towards that inflammatory response, and or the other person involved, or like I said, it could be multiple people. Maybe it's like a whole group of people where this is the main problem, feeling everything. And two, even if it's not like right now when you're listening to this, you might be like, well, I'm not arguing with anybody right now. What's going on? It could also mean that this is something that might pop up soon in the future for you. And this is why Spirit Guides wanted to talk to you about this, pile 1. So even if it doesn't resonate quite yet, it might pop up as like a soon to be future thing. And or if it's not people that you're arguing with, it could also be in general in life. Maybe you have some sort of self-work to do when it comes to the way you respond verbally to when you feel like people are like walking over you, and or like there's an injustice element there. And it's not Spirit Guides saying don't feel like you've been wronged at all. Like, it's not in any way, pile number 1, like, oh, well, how dare you get mad because, you should just not care about this. Like, that's not human nature. That's not how we work. I mean, when we see injustice, very naturally, excuse me, ooh, my voice is a bit scratchy, I apologize. When we see injustice, very naturally, we get upset because we feel like, oh man, this just grinds my gears. Okay. And two, connecting it with Akashic Records in general with that past life message, I almost wonder, pile number 1, with this Justice reversed coming out, I think you've dealt with a lot of injustice over many different past lives, at least a lot of the recent ones. And maybe that's why, even on a soul level, this triggers you. Like, when people do things like that, you're like, man, I just want to go up to the bat, or grab a bat, I want to go to the races, and I just want to fight against this injustice, okay? So this is kind of what they're emphasizing here. But I think with the Willow card here at the very beginning, that was your pile leader, which, as we said, as you recall, brought up the words and phrases of adaptability and flexibility. This might be what you're going through right now, or like the general theme, however it applies to you. It might be a lesson in learning to be adaptable and flexible in the way that you do respond to things that kind of trigger your upset with injustice. Okay. Let's keep looking at your other tarot cards. We'll see if there's, oh yeah, lots of fire. Okay. I wonder if maybe even some of you are fire signs as your sun sign, because you have a lot of wands, and even your Wild Harmonics card here was a fire card. 6 of Wands reversed, pile 1, is a feeling of a lack of victory. So I think especially either it was like an event recently where not only was your sense of justice overridden and that boundary was crossed by somebody else, or like you saw, could have been even like someone else too, possibly, that you saw people being unjust to them and it really upset you. It might have been in the defense of someone else and not just yourself, pile 1. Either way, though, especially with this in the present position, that 6 of Wands reversed, it almost feels like you lost. You're like, oh man, I feel like I lost. Like, because the 6 of Wands is typically upright, like, oh, I've had a victory, I have public acclaim for this, but reversed, it feels like this just got snuffed. It feels like the bad person or the bad people, quote unquote, won, you know, quote unquote, but like, and so maybe it really upset you, pile 1, because once again, on that soul level in past lives, it's like, it just feels like injustice winning again, like it did in the past. Okay. Let's look at your future tarot cards here too. And then the 5 of Pentacles, yep. Which can technically mean financial hardship. That's like a very traditional meaning with the 5 of Pentacles, but it can also mean hardship in general, or sometimes it can mean authorities failing us. You know, maybe it's something more on a societal level that's been upsetting you. Okay, especially when it comes to justice. It could have been even like maybe some of you with justice reversed, it can mean you losing like a court case or losing like a legal related thing, even though technically you were in the right, and that's why you're so angry about it. Because in the future, it's like you fear that it's going to lead to this hardship here. And then we have the Knight of Swords as the final outcome card. Okay. And the Knight of Swords, well, interesting though, pile 1, because the Knight of Swords can represent a person. That is one interpretation. And typically as a person, it represents masculine energy, kind of youthful, but maybe past the age of 20 or 30 or so. Could be an air sign specifically because it's the sword suit, which is air. I almost wonder if maybe that's the person that you've been combating with or fighting with over this. Maybe like, say if it was a court case, it's like they're the one that you were fighting in the court, or it's like the person you've been arguing with in general. Or maybe this is like that person we talked about with the soul circle thing where you tend to reincarnate with them a lot in your soul circle. And that's the person that kind of is your like rival with this whole justice-oriented theme. Yeah. So, I mean, so far that's the context of everything. It's like spirit guides want to talk to you about, from your Akashic Records, this whole pattern of, you know, someone's being not very nice with the Ace of Wands, well, the YouTube-friendly way of putting it, and it overrides your sense of justice. You're really upset because it's like people are just getting away with bad things. There's lack of victory in this area, and it leads to a hardship. And you know what? Actually, too, pile number 1, even if the Knight of Swords doesn't represent another person, sometimes the Knight of Swords can represent the quality of impulsivity, because he's the fastest knight of the 4 different knights in the court cards. He goes with absolute speed compared to, say, like the Knight of Pentacles, who goes the slowest, okay? So that might be a little bit of the impulsivity we saw there with inflammatory response. I mean, maybe even you did have an inflammatory response recently and you felt kind of bad about it because you're like, oh man, like, I mean, it's not like you were wrong, pile 1, for the injustice that you felt. It's you weren't in the wrong for feeling like, oh, that boundary should not have been crossed from a legal or like moral standpoint. Apologies if you do hear thunder in the background. There's a bit of a storm rolling in. It's not like you were wrong, but maybe like the way that you responded got you in trouble, or you felt like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have worded it that way. And so this reading then, in that case, is just spirit reminding you, well, like, this is something that's like not only a lifelong thing that you've been working on, but like different past lives long thing that you've been working on. Okay, so that might be why it's in a special struggle for you, especially if you had past lives, pile 1. Like, I'm feeling that the system just really never worked in your favor. It feels like the system failed you a lot. It maybe, as I said, it's like a lot of times justice just didn't work. Like maybe you were put down upon and trampled upon, and, you know, insert other ways here that people can be, you know, oppressed, or it's like their government doesn't work for them, etc., or like some sort of major system fails them, okay? So when that happens, it impresses such a shadow on our soul that it can come out even in our modern lifetime, okay? So maybe you even wonder why it makes you so upset. Well, that's why, pile number 1. Because you've been dealing with this, let's just be honest, dealing with this crap for so long. There it is, okay. So let's look at your oracle cards, because those will provide some advice, I think, with what's going on here, as well as other, like, lasting messages. Oh boy, that storm is rolling in. Hopefully it's not too intense, right? Okay, Spirit, anything else you want to say to pile number 1 about this situation and their past lives from the Akashic Records. With this whole thing going on. I'm feeling drawn to this one right here from Sacred Destiny. Oh, we have love. But you know what, pile number 1? Here's what I'm going to tell you. You do it out of love. And that's how you know that you're standing on the moral high ground with this, okay? Maybe even the whole issue at hand here, pile 1, is a situation where even though technically maybe you lost, quote unquote, because of that 6 of Wands reversed, it's like in the end, from a divine perspective, you're the one that won from a moral perspective, okay? So if that did occur, don't get down on yourself too much. I mean, obviously, you know, it sucks when something goes on where it's like justice was not served. But it's like, as we all know, the truth comes out in the end. Oh, that's another thing I should tell you, is with the Knight of Swords here. Sometimes I read that as like the truth coming out, because the Swords cards are air, which is about like truth and communication with elemental elemental symbolism in tarot, okay? So actually this might be a message in the end here, pile number 1, of not only them acknowledging this from a past life perspective and also your current life perspective, but that you might be coming to the end of a karmic cycle here of some sort where finally you're going to get some of that justice in the end here with the Knight of Swords, okay? On top of, you know, like I said, maybe a bit of a lesson about inflammatory response, but let's look at your Woodland Wardens Oracle as well. And, you know, some to you too, it might be with the love card having come out, that it isn't necessarily with like a whole system-wide thing. It could also be like maybe with romantic partners, this tends to be an issue. Maybe you've had a long pattern of like romantic partners that have been unjust to you. You know, either like literally legally, but or maybe even just on like a moral personal level. And maybe that came up again recently and you're just wondering like, why does this always happen? So especially if you've been asking the universe a lot recently, like, why does this always happen to me with romantic partners, with people that I love or that are supposed to love me? That's kind of the answer, pile 1, is once again, it's like a past life karmic thing, okay? But you know what? If I had to pin it down, like I was saying with the Knight of Swords, there is an intuitive message I'm picking up on here that it's like that's coming to an end, as I said before, pile 1. All right, there we go. I feel drawn to this one. For Woodland Wardens, we have the Skunk and the Magnolia with protection. Okay, so that's another really positive part of this reading, pile 1. Even if you feel like recently you have lost something where justice should have won in the end, okay, you are protected. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing intuitively, or even too for those of you where maybe like you did have an inflammatory response and you kind of regret like the level to which you got angry with whoever was involved or whatever was involved, and you're fearing kind of this sort of outcome of like, oh God, you know, like you're anxious about, I'm going to get really in big trouble for having said that, or I'm going to have like some sort of consequence for whatever this was. This is basically Spirit saying that you are protected, okay? Like, reading from the Akashic Records, you're not meant to get in trouble for this. However, that doesn't necessarily mean Spirit is saying don't work on this, okay? So, like, if you did have an inflammatory response that was kind of really aggressive, you know, 100% work on it, right? Because, you know, we all have different things that we need to work on in life. That's what life lessons are all about and why we're put through these trials, okay? But I will say, if there is any anxiety about, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble, oh God, there's going to be this major repercussion, you're protected, pile number 1. And, you know, it's interesting, too, because when I look at a skunk, or I think about skunks, right, the reason why they do spray people, which is kind of an inflammatory response, except, you know, well, not from the mouth, it's from the other end, right? But is because they're protecting themselves. They think, well, something is coming up against me, I am scared, so my defense mechanism is I spray this, I don't know exactly what it is. I guess it's technically like a liquid on people. You know what skunks do, right? But they do it because they're usually when they're scared. So deep down inside, pile number 1, very understandably, like, this really, if you're asking, like, what does this stem from? Not only past life things, but it also can be out of a defense mechanism of I'm scared and I need to defend myself. You know, maybe in this life you've gone through a lot of situations where you felt unsafe, and it's like that when you feel unsafe, it's like very understandably that trigger of, oh, now I need to defend myself. But sometimes it can go a little bit too far. Okay, so, really this reading, pile 1, is a little bit of a balm of worry about, you're going to be protected in the end. It's going to be fine. It's a little bit of an explanation about, why you tend to go through these things again and again, as Akashic Records readings typically do, because, like I said, it brings forward information from past lives, okay? And I think, too, when we talked in the very beginning about the Willow card, meaning flexibility and adaptability, I had mentioned that maybe recently you went through a time of trial where you've had to be kind of flexible or adaptable, or very possibly it's like you're fearing that that's coming up in a way of like, oh my god, I'm going to have to be a lot more flexible than I was before, okay? If that's the case, pile number 1, I'm tying this all together into, that message. That in combination with protection is like Spirit saying through the Akashic Records, what is written is you're going to be fine. Okay, you're going to weather through just fine. Just like the willow tree, you're going to have the adaptability and the flexibility to get through all of this. So if that's more your case, just be aware of your inflammatory response when it comes to those times of hardship, okay? Because, like I said, even the Five of Pentacles came out here. And as I said, that can be a time of especially with the future position, it's like you fear that hardship is coming. So it's kind of reflective of what I said in the very beginning with that Willow card. But you're going to go through just fine. You're protected, like I said. Knight of Swords is about, speeding through things. Beware of impulsivity. Okay. But a Knight of Swords also gets through things very quickly because, as I said, he is the fastest knight. So actually, too, if you are going through a difficult time, I think it might come to an end a lot faster than you're expecting because of the energy of that Knight of Swords in the outcome position with your spread, okay? So kind of a multifaceted reading today, pile number 1. It's a lot of different things. That's why I like Akashic Records readings, because not only do they talk about, past lives, they talk about our current lives, they also can bring up things that are going on right now specifically that, we can talk about on a mundane level of, oh, you got in an argument with someone, just as one example. But it can also mean in terms of a spiritual overarching level of, well, past life reasons is why this is happening again, or why you feel like this tends to pop up again and again. Because as I said, some of you might be asking the universe, why do I always get in arguments with lovers? Why do I always get in arguments about, some sort of justice system failing me, or a system in general, even if it's not legal, failing me, okay? And that's why. But despite all that, at the end, the Knight of Swords, as I said, also is a victorious card. I mean, we have, the lack of victory here. We have the injustice with the Justice reversed card. The hardship with the Five of Pentacles. But then at the end, he still charges forward full speed ahead. So he's going to weather through just fine. And I think you will as well. Pile 1. Okay. So that is your Akashic Records reading for today. I hope, of course, most of all, that it helped you and that it resonated with your own story and that you liked it. If so, please like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to Lone Pine Tarot if you have not done so already. And as is our tradition, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye, Pile 1. Hello there, my wonderful pile number 2. Welcome to your Pick a Card reading Akashic Records message for today. And as you recall, you were drawn to the Citrus card, or number 45, as your pile leader. Now, when I look at the Citrus card, I'm really drawn to the way that it looks. I guess the word I want to use is radiant within this particular card. We have a background of shadows. It's kind of dark and murky. But then in the middle, we have this very vibrant, or radiant, as I said, citrus fruit, aka I think it's an orange, right? Shining almost like sunlight, okay? And so what I think of when that imagery is just sitting right in front of me is the word empowerment, being empowered, shining despite the shadows around you. So I think pile number 2. Now your other cards, of course, will provide more context, but intuitively, at least, what I'm hearing is this Akashic Records message is probably related to a situation in your life right now, or something maybe even from past lives that it wants to bring up, about you having to feel empowered after a time of feeling weak. Okay, so maybe perhaps recently on a mundane level, you've been feeling like a situation where you were kind of powerless to stop something, or powerless to control something. Maybe something really just kind of got thrown as a wrench into your life, or maybe you're in a situation where other people control the strings of everything going on, like say at a job, maybe perhaps I'm hearing intuitively. And it's like you wish you had more control over what was going on, but kind of right now it's like the sensation of the Eight of Swords in tarot. And I'll be interested if that card does pop up in your tarot spread later but like you want to break free, you want to get out of this murky place, but it's this feeling of, well, I'm kind of stuck here. Okay, especially if it is a job, pile number 2, because with, kind of your security at stake here with a job, sometimes we feel kind of pressured to stay at a certain place, even if we know we don't feel very empowered or in control here because we care more about our security, very understandably so, right? And so I think, though, despite that, it's like an arc towards greater empowerment. You becoming like that shining sun within the murk, or something coming along. Maybe it could even be a blessing type reading, too, as written in your Akashic Records, that it's like this blessing's going to come along and drive away the shadows and give you this opportunity to feel more empowered and in control. This card, too, based on the guidebook as well, is sometimes about dealing with the hands that we are dealt. It talks about the difference between, sometimes in life we're dealt hands that we don't necessarily, we didn't want life to throw that hand our way, obviously. Oh man, we got kind of a crappy hand, but we can't control that. But what we can control is what we do with the hands that we are dealt. Okay, so it's kind of a twofold message I'm hearing so far just off of the pile leader. But of course, as I said, more context will come through with the next cards. I'm going to draw both your tarot spread right now as well as one of the oracle cards. Okay, so Spirit coming forward, Spirit guide specifically reading from the Akashic Records. What do you want to say to pile 2 right now? Thank you, about this whole empowerment message, what's going on, feeling like they don't have any control potentially. And, to pile number 2, with Akashic Records messages, as I said, this can sometimes stem from past life-related things. I almost wonder if you've had a lot of past lives where your life was very out of your control. It's like other people controlled your life more. For some reason, some of you, it's almost like, literally it could have been that you did live a life of, nobility, but at least, the cliche coming forward, is kind of like the princess trapped in the tower, or the princess trapped in the cage, and her family kind of controls everything about her life. Well, I guess princes had that too. Nobility of both genders, no matter what. They always dealt with their lives were out of their control because so much rode on them being who they were, of the families that they were. They couldn't marry who they wanted to. They couldn't take the job that they wanted to because they were kind of stuck in what their family did as nobility, right? No matter what culture you came from, that was kind of consistent everywhere, right? You had a role to fulfill, you had to fulfill it, you couldn't fight against it. So once again, it's like that Eight of Swords energy, that feeling of I'm kind of trapped. So, some of you, it might have literally been a past life where you were nobility, or even if you weren't nobility, in general, it was like that feeling of, well, this is what my parents did, or this is what my family does, and I feel kind of stuck in that. And that's reflected in your modern current life, pile number 2, with the feeling of, well, I'm kind of just stuck on this road. I have to go this way. I have to do this. I feel trapped, right? Actually, here, one second. Sorry, pile 2. Feeling more drawn to this part of the deck. Okay. And like I said, that could represent in a job right now that you're not very happy with. It could represent a family situation that you feel kind of stuck in. Maybe a living situation in general. Let's look first at your Wild Harmonics Oracle, and I'm going to read from the guidebook like I usually do with this card. So we have Celestial of Water, Empathic Offering. Okay, so we have Celestial and Water as the elements. Let's look at the guidebook for that particular card. Celestial of Water. There we go. Okay, took me a second. Apologies for the wait. All right, Empathic Offering, Celestial of Water. As the celestial energies embody into the flowing feeling of life, the depth of healing relations emerge. Giving, making an offering of oneself, finding where my needs and the needs of the world meet, and going there with passion. This card is about one's calling Okay, speaking of being trapped or feeling like we have to do what other people tell us versus what we actually want to do, aka our calling, right? This card is about one's calling and how it materializes as being of service to others. This is not a dogma of self-sacrifice, but a genuinely self-interested desire that is perceived in the world as something others need. This is doing what I truly love and realizing that what I truly love is the highest path of service to all as well. Okay. There we go. We have a bit of a reflection there. Drinking from the well first so that I have strength allows me to then carry water to others. No one benefits if I collapse, depleted, spilling the water I would carry to nourish others. So I sit with this and allow my actions to reflect both this wisdom and the knowledge that what nourishes me will nourish others. With this knowledge in mind, I bring the water I sought for myself, having drank deeply to the world. And the inquiry or question to ask yourself is, what is it that I nourish myself with that I can also offer to the world for its nourishment? You know what, pile number 2? It also kind of depends on what part of your life you're in right now, especially if you're younger. So I suppose it could be, to anyone of any age, but typically it's when we're younger that we do decisions regarding, like, career. Especially for those of you that are struggling right now with family expectations versus what you want to do. That is bang on what this reading is about. Because as I was saying, I feel like, you feel kind of trapped, but like there's a feeling of I want to be empowered, but also this is the hand that life dealt you, but you're like, you want more control than that. And, obviously, as we all know, that's very, very common too. Like families might have certain expectations on us that we do certain things versus, well, what do I want to do? Or even if it's not your family, pile number 2, it could also be societal expectations as well. But what this card says is your meaning and your purpose does not have to be misaligned with what other people want for you. And like it said, what you want deeply down oftentimes is something you can also share with the world, in terms of benefiting the world and not just yourself. Okay, so if you are in a situation like that right now, what I'm telling you is this Akashic Records message is encouraging you towards what is the direction that you want in terms of your purpose or your calling. Okay, right? It almost makes me think of, what was that Pixar movie? Elemental, where I believe it was, I can't remember, Ember is her name? She was the fire main character. It was basically like her parents wanted her to keep running their shop because that was their dream, but then she wanted to do something different. I think it was like glass making. It's like that kind of message I'm hearing right now. And it's like so many of your past lives, pile, too, have reflected this, though. But you can't nurture others if you yourself are doing things that make you feel depleted. So you need to find something that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel like this is my purpose, so that you can give back more to the world in that self-sacrificial way that the guidebook was describing with this card. Okay. All right, and then we have, the Four of Pentacles is the first card. So that's about like reserving our energy, our resources, kind of holding on to them. Like this guy is holding on to the pentacles. He's clutching them quite close, holding our cards. Interesting, pile number 2. It's almost like it's either the representation of the feeling that you have of life kind of withholding options or resources from you. Or it could also mean, especially for those of you where maybe it's a struggle between like what your family wants for you or society wants for you versus what you want, that it's like the reason why it bothers you is because it's like life or your family withholding resources from you if you don't go along with what other people are telling you to do. Like they're almost the figure in the Four of Pentacles here holding on and clutching their resources. Okay. But also reserving your own energy, which is reflective of what that card said, pile 2. It's about needing to fill your own cup and give yourself a drink of water before you can give a drink to others, okay? So as the inciting incident card, as I like to call the first card in my spread, it's like, this is where this all stems from. It's all this feeling of, I need to preserve my energy. I need to preserve mine, or other people involved that are holding back their resources unless you do what they want, okay? That's where that empowerment message comes in too. Then next up we have, look at all the pentacles. Okay, so I think a lot of this might be related to career because so many pentacles cards have come up. And we have the Six of Pentacles here, which is about literally, look, distribution of resources. I don't know if you can catch that on camera. It's a bit farther away, but literally it's someone who is doling out money to one person over the other. Some of you might have even struggled with, and if not in this lifetime, pile 2, but maybe previous lifetimes, or maybe it's both even. It's kind of an echo of those past lives of, well, you're gonna do what I want. Otherwise, I'm gonna hold something back here, and I'm not gonna distribute what's fair to you unless you do what I tell you to do. That's that sensation of control, too, I think, that I was reading in the Pile Leader when we first were starting your reading, okay? It's like, it's not fair to you, though, because it's like, why? It feels like somebody is holding back something from you just because you're not doing what they want. That's what this reading feels like, Pile 2. Which my condolences if so, because that is never fun to deal with. It's almost kind of manipulative in a way of like, well, if you don't do what I want, I'm not going to give you. I mean, but here's the problem is that sometimes, even though I say manipulative, Pile 2, especially when it's like well-intentioned family, keyword well-intentioned, right? When it's well-intentioned family, they think they're doing it because they think that they know what's best for you, and they're like, well, I want you to go and do this path because this will be a good path to success, and I want you to be happy and successful. But the irony is that then you have that, almost self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, then you're not going to be happy because you're not doing what you want. Even though technically that person might try to control you because they think, well, that will make you happy. But as I said, self-fulfilling prophecy, you're not happy because you're not doing what actually is your calling. Okay. So, and as I said, in past lives, that may have happened a lot. Like, you were nobility and your life was completely out of your control because you just had to marry this person and you had to do this thing over here. Or even if you weren't nobility in these past lives, Pile number 2, it could have been, other people played other roles, and no matter what your economic class was or your social class. It could have been, if you were a peasant, same thing. You were kind of stuck doing, I don't know, being a farmer or, working in a factory, or, getting paid very little, and you're kind of stuck in that station, especially in societies that were very rigid in their social hierarchical structure, right? There was not a lot of upward mobility, which in modern societies, relatively, we tend to have more ability for mobility, of course, depending on where you live, right? But at the same time, it's like, especially in, previous lives, you might have dealt with that a lot. That feeling of, man, this is not fair. Everything is withheld from me. And, and even if it's not a family holding this back from you, Pile 2, it could feel like, too, like your society is also holding this back from you. Like, it's like your social class has always kind of defined more of you than you wish it would have. And, unfortunately, that's very common, right? Oftentimes your social class is your same social class your whole life. Now, sometimes people have, they start out very high class, really rich, and by the end of life, they're down at the bottom, right? And sometimes it's the opposite. They're down at the bottom, but then there's that underdog story of going up. And maybe that's another reason why this is coming up, Pile 2, is because you've had a lot of past lives, or this current life too, where you're trying to break those social boundaries, those social hierarchical structures, and get past them, okay? And so if you are doing something right now in your life, Pile 2, where you're trying to break that, this is like Spirit giving you a pat on the back saying, yes, you're following the exact life lesson that you're supposed to based on the Akashic Records at this time. But that doesn't mean there aren't frustrations. You're doing well, I think. I can feel that. But there are those frustrations of still society or family, etc. is holding things back from you, okay? Let's look at the present position. Yep, okay. We have another Pentacles card, so for sure I think this is about resources or career for most of you, right? Or it could be living situation too. 3 of Pentacles reverse literally is like, no one's working with me. I'm alone. Maybe even there's a feeling of, like, maybe in this life you've been disowned, technically. Maybe in past lives you were disowned because you didn't do what other people wanted you to do. Okay, no one's working with you. You feel like you're all completely on your own 2 feet and no one else is giving a helping hand, which never fun, Pile number 2. Especially if you're going through it right now, definitely not fun. Okay, so it's like Spirit acknowledging that, yes, this is part of your Akashic Records, your life story. All right. The struggles you're going through right now. Oh, but then we have a plot twist. Look at that, Pile number 2. Things are going to change. This is a really good card to get. Before I say anything for sure, let's look at the final card we have. Oh, beautiful. The Six of Swords. Yes. Okay. So pile number 2. If there's anything you walk away from this reading from, despite these struggles in your past lives, and despite the struggle in your current life with whatever this is specifically for you, you're breaking it. You're going to break it, because look at that. In the near future, you have the Nine of Cups upright. That is the card of wishes granted. That is the card of emotional satisfaction. You can even see it, because sometimes this is called the smug card, because this guy is literally like, look at my cups. I'm so happy and emotionally fulfilled. I've got my arms crossed and I've got a smile on my face. Your trajectory in this life, pile number 2, is not only the story of the underdog weighed down under heavy expectations from others, but it's also the story of the underdog that succeeds despite maybe being cut off from resources because you refuse to bend to other people's will. Okay, that's what I'm hearing. I think in past lives you weren't able to break from this, or if you did, it's like you got punished severely in a way that it's like you never were able to kind of recover from it, especially, like I said, back then, depending on your culture, but generally across the world it was like that. Even to this day it's still a little bit, right? But it could make or break you if you were cut off from your family and your social status, especially if you were like higher social status, right? But this life, you're on your way to breaking it. And that's what your Akashic Records message really is about today, pile 2. You're breaking it. And not only that, you're moving forward. That's what the Six of Swords is all about. And that's what I mean in terms of breaking that cycle. You're moving beyond this. So really, it's the end of the karmic cycle. It's the end of this pattern of a life lesson in this life for you that perhaps was not perfected in previous lives. Okay, so whatever it is right now that you're struggling with in this area, you're going to succeed. You're going to come out fine. You're going to get a wish granted in this area. That's what the Nine of Cups is all about. And you're going to make progress and move forward. Okay. You're going to get to safer pastures, greener pastures. Also, too, it can even mean like generational, too. Maybe part of this isn't just past lives, pile 2. It could also be familial, generational trauma, where it could be that your family is from a culture or a country where, like, even in modern day, sometimes it has that strict hierarchical structure or systems that were not fair to your family for whatever reason. Could be oppression, could be economic instability, etc. But it's like you're the one that breaks that cycle. Even though you have to stand alone, and that's one of the hardest things, you succeed despite that. And, I mean, what a beautiful underdog story, pile number 2. To be able to break beyond that, okay? Let's also draw some of your other oracle cards. We'll see if there's any final messages from your spirit guides from the Akashic Records on this, as well as maybe some advice or hints of the future, the blessing here. Maybe we'll find out what the blessing is there with the wish granted. But in general, I think that's why your citrus card, excuse me, represented empowerment, pile 2. You are dealing with the hand that you're dealt, and you're making gold out of it. Okay. So let's look here. Right there, I'm feeling drawn to this one in particular. We have the opossum and the peony with bashfulness. How cute. I love opossums. They're so sweet. Underrated animals. And a lot of people might think of them as just rodents, but they're actually very beneficial. They often don't get rabies. They're one of, like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're one of the animals that, like, are the least likely to get rabies, number 1. But also, number 2, they eat ticks. And we like less ticks around, so A+ for opossums. And then the peony always blooms in June, at least where I am. And bashfulness is the key word. We'll look at that more in a second. Let's draw your second oracle card and see if they tie together. But what I think about most when I look at the opossum pile 2 is the way that they tend to play dead. Okay, they tend to pretend like, to protect themselves that they're out for the count when actually they're still alive. but then it gets predators to, they trick them, okay? So I almost wonder, intuitively, I feel like there's a sense here of something that you think is out of your reach or something that you think is dead, but actually it's going to turn around. It just looks like it's no activity right now. Like, I don't know if recently you've been kind of like you started a business or like you run a business of some sort and it feels like activity has been dying down and you're like, oh my God, is this the end? But then it's just like playing dead. And that's like the wish granted with this cycle. Something like that. Let's look at this. We have new beginnings. Beautiful. Not only, like I said, you're breaking that cycle, pile number 2, with new beginnings. It's like a new dawn in these cycles of your life patterns of different past lives to now. Also, maybe true in your family as well. You're the new beginning. You're the generation that breaks that, okay? But too, especially if you are looking in a situation where you feel like things are out of your control, you feel kind of trapped in some way, you feel like you are disempowered rather than empowered. This is that blessing, that wish coming through, is you're going to be able to make it. Some of you might literally be moving because you had so many pentacles, which is like material things. What's around us, our physical security, right? And then you literally had the 6 of Swords, which means movement forward. Sometimes it literally means moving somewhere better. And the new beginnings, of course, we always think of moving as well. So if some of you are even looking at a move here soon and you're like, I want to get out of this place. It's so bad. I want to get to somewhere better. This is a sign that you're going to make it soon. Okay? You're going to make that progress soon. So keep hope in that. Same thing too, if maybe, like I said with the business as example, maybe business feels like it's been kind of dwindling a little bit. You're going to make that forward momentum soon. It's going to be a new beginning of some sort, okay? Like a new phase of greater blessings and growth. It's just, for right now, for some reason, it feels like it's kind of playing dead. Okay? Just like the opossum. And bashfulness, too, makes me think of something being shyer than it should be, right? Or coming off as more humble than it should, being bashful, right? So you might first have it come in a way that you don't expect. This blessing might come in a way of kind of underhanded, and I mean that with a positive connotation, pile too. So be on the lookout for things at first that are not quite what they seem when it comes to a wish that you want granted here, especially in areas where you felt like you've had no control or like a lack of support or teamwork from other people. And that will give you the empowerment to follow that calling that we talked about. Okay, because what they're saying is you don't need all this here. Even if you were cut off, even if, a system or a family failed you in some way, or a family turned you away because you didn't do what they wanted, or etc. However that might apply to you. This is basically saying that doesn't matter because you're going to make progress anyways. To follow that calling, to be empowered. Okay. So really, this technically is a blessing reading, pile 2. But as I said, with Akashic Records, it's kind of like the record of, of course, all past lives, but also the past, present, and future of this life. And that's what I'm seeing for your future right now, based on the Akashic Records reading, okay? So blessings are coming, new beginnings. And, remember I said in the beginning, it's like a card of murkiness, but then you have that sunshine there, right, with the citrus card. And then there you go, you have symbolism with dawn. It's like a new beginning of sunshine after a time of dark. Okay. So hard times are coming to an end. I think you're going to go into a cycle of greater prosperity than you have had so far. Okay. So, beautiful reading. I hope that you liked it, pile number 2. Of course, most of all, I hope that it resonated with you and helped you. And if so, please like the video, comment down below, or subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And as I always say in our tradition, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye, pile 2. Hello there, my wonderful pile number 3. Welcome today to your pick a card reading message about your Akashic Records and what your spirit guides want you to know most about them right now at this moment. And as you recall, you were drawn to the beautiful card of Thistle, or the number 37, as your pile leader today. So, of course, when we look at Thistle, our immediate reaction might be kind of like, ooh, that's a bit of a prickly flower. It's not necessarily like a flower you want to just go pick and grab, because obviously they have the like the spines and or like the thorns on them. So I feel like pile 3 that this represents that recently you've been going through a time of like feeling like you're walking through a thistle thicket almost. A feeling of, or maybe if it's not a whole thicket of like obstacles, it could have been like there's just one main thorn in your side, because that's another thing you might represent, or not represent, but associate thistles with, is this feeling of, there's this painful thing I need to pluck out. It could be that there's a situation where it's like, you have to kind of remove whatever this is, but it's going to be painful, so you're kind of hesitating to pull that thorn out, so to speak. It's never fun to pull thorns or splinters out, right? And 2, in general, it's just kind of an uncomfortable situation, I feel like. Okay, and that's kind of what your spirit guides want to talk to you about today, about your Akashic Records message. It's like something that was written in your Akashic Records for you to deal with at this time. And I think it might provide insight in order, like, on how to, like, get through this obstacle, or how to, like, pluck out this metaphorical thorn of sorts, okay? But we also need to acknowledge the other side of plants like the thistle, because even though it looks like prickly, they are very beneficial for the environment, okay? To my understanding, at least where I live, a lot of birds eat off of thistle, the thistle seeds, at least like goldfinches do, I think. So there might be a side of this that's more beneficial than you're expecting, or there's kind of like a hidden underbelly of blessing to whatever pulling this thorn out is, or obstacle, even though at first glance you kind of look at it and you're like, oh man, I am dreading dealing with this. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through with your other cards and see more context about what Spirit wants to speak to you about today with this message. But that is what I'm seeing so far. Okay, and I do see it too with the inverted triangle behind the thistle. That is the alchemical symbol for water, and water in cartomancy tends to represent our emotions and our relationships. So maybe for some of you especially, this is a thorn related to a relationship with somebody. Okay. So let's look at both your tarot spread, and we're going to draw one of the oracle decks to begin, and we'll read from the guidebook specifically for that oracle deck, because that guidebook is, as I always said in previous readings, if you've seen me use it before, very beneficial, very well written. So let's see. Spirit, anything you want to say about this whole situation, using the energy from the Akashic Records. Actually, I'm feeling drawn more to, it's kind of further bit down here. Okay. Right there. Okay. Thank you, Spirit. Draw the cards right from that part of the deck. Beautiful. And then let's grab your Wild Harmonics Oracle. This deck, specifically today for the other piles, has been really good about like past life lessons too, which is very common in Akashic Records readings, pile 3. Because the Akashic Records not only hold the records, as you know, of this current life, but also previous lives as well. Right there, down at the bottom, it feels like. Okay. Right there, okay. This one, okay. There we go. Thank you for your patience while I drew those. Okay. So, from the Wild Harmonics today, pile 3, we have a very spiritual one. Dimensional of Celestial Victorious Silence. We have someone that is looking in quite a meditative pose. There's not a lot about their identity, because their face is obscured. So we have both the crown and the third eye chakra, even a bit of the throat covered, the heart, and of course the root chakra down there at the bottom. Interesting. So our connection to spirit, our heart chakra, and our groundedness. Let's look at Dimensional of Celestial. All right. There we go. Thanks for your weight there, pile 3, as I tried to find in the guidebook. Okay. Victorious Silence, Dimensional Celestial. As the energies of the dimensional expanse embody into the celestial realms, they bring with them the reminder of where all celestial bodies exist in infinite space. Peace, tranquility, silence, transparency, and the letting go into the greater. This card points me to that which is all behind sound, form, light, movement, and so on. I could call it nothing, but it is less than that, and it is silence too. It is space, allowance, and absolute openness. Silence is that which always is. Throughout the coming to be and the passing away of the clamor of noise, silence is the space within which the noise can arise from and return into. Silence abides. It makes all possible, and when faced with any seemingly insurmountable noise, silence, stillness, reigns ultimate in its unconquerableness. And the inquiry or the question to ask yourself is, what can I make better in my life by leaving it alone? So what that tells me, pile number 3, connecting this to the meaning of your Thistle card, I almost wonder if this thing you fear having to come across, or that thorn to be pulled out, might actually be better served if you let it come out on its own divine timing. Okay, because like the question says, what can I make better in my life by just leaving it alone? Also, it could also mean, pile 3, that if this is a communication-related matter, like maybe you're having a struggle with somebody and it's kind of like, you're not sure if you should say something to help pull that thorn out, so to speak, of, maybe the tension between you or whatever you're disagreeing on, or, or even if it's like not so much a person. It could be you're wondering about, like, should I communicate about this thorn that's been prickling into my side here? It's like this card is saying the better lesson or option to choose might be to let silence reign, to not say anything. Because sometimes, pile number 3, silence can say a lot more than what words can. Okay? There's something about needing to maybe be quiet, about maybe needing to let silence reign. Okay? Let's look at your tarot cards and see what else pops out. Interesting. We have, the Knight of Pentacles. So the Knight of Pentacles is the slowest of all 4 knights, but even though he is slow, he is steady and he is reliable. Sometimes it can represent a person who is an earth sign, potentially, right? Being Pentacles. It can also represent someone who is a masculine energy and tends towards the younger, maybe around 30 to 40 years old, I would say. Not in their 20s or younger than that, maybe just kind of between 20s and middle age, right? So that might actually be the person that you've been dealing with the thorn in your side, or they could be someone that is, even if they're not of that physical age, that's kind of how they maybe come off in an emotional maturity manner, and too, like I said, they could be an earth sign. Okay, also it can represent a time where we felt like we've had to kind of go slow and steady about something, so even if it is it's not another person, pile 3, it could also be when you've come across this thistle thicket, so to speak, or these obstacles in your life recently where it's like things have kind of had to slow down. It's like this energy of like spirit acknowledging, yes, you have had to slow down. You haven't been able to race. You haven't been able to go full speed ahead like, say, the Knight of Swords would. But you're doing well despite that, pile 3. So even if you don't feel like you're doing well right now, a Knight of Pentacles, even though he's going slow, it doesn't mean that he's technically not getting towards his goal. It doesn't mean that he's not going to get there. It doesn't mean that he's failing. It just means that he's getting through a time in life where he's going to have to kind of pick his way more carefully. Okay, so keep those things in mind as we keep going forward with these cards. We have, pile 1 had this card in the exact same position. We have Justice reversed. Oh boy, I think that might be the thicket that you're going through, pile number 3. A feeling of maybe a fear of legal problems, hence Justice reversed. Literally, it can mean lawyer, legal, court-related things. It could also represent a feeling of part of the obstacle is a system that's against you. Okay, so maybe society in general, maybe some sort of power system that's no longer serving you or society in general. It could also mean, too, that your argument or this thorn in your side from this other person or in general could be a thorn of injustice. You feel like something is not fair. You feel like something is against you in a way that's just not morally and legally, possibly literally legally right or ethically right. Okay. And that maybe is what's making you careen your hand towards wanting to pluck that thorn out. But let's keep going. Let's see what happens. We have the Fool reversed. Be wary of taking risks, okay? Also a feeling sometimes we want to start something new, but we can't because the Fool is the very beginning of the journey in tarot. He's 0. He's also the end. He's not just the beginning, he's the end being 0. He's infinite. Speaking of infinite, just like your Dimensional Celestial talked about. Infinity, right? And that sometimes, too, can harken back to past life messages, which, as this is an Akashic Records reading, past lives do come up because it is a part of our history and our records. So, pile number 3, I get the sense, too, that maybe this has been a pattern in your past lives where you feel like you've had to kind of slog through things a lot more slowly because of obstacles that were in your way, which, obviously that happens to most people in every single life, but I think you especially with these past lives, not just having to be slogged down and having this thorn in your side, but it's a thorn in your side of injustice in some way. You kind of remind me of pile 1 in that way because they have very similar messages. If you were drawn to pile 1 too, you might want to view that pile as well if you're interested in that. And I think the problem is that maybe you tend to, you might be considering something risky. I think that's the thorn pluck we were discussing before. And I think in past lives too, in order to get past this injustice and to make progress a lot faster, you were thinking to yourself, well, I'll just quick do something. It might be a bit risky, but I'm gonna just do this because I want a new journey. I want a new beginning. I want to get past this issue of this thorn thicket. So it's almost like you facing a literal thorn thicket here, pile number 3. And you thinking, well, if I just race through it, I'll get prickled less. Okay, I'm going to get less splinters. I'm going to get less thorns in my body. However, what Spirit is saying with this, or Akashic Records technically is how it's written, is that if you go fast with whatever this is, you might get more thorns than if you were to take the steady, not slutty, right? The steady, slow path that the Knight of Pentacles tends to represent. So I think you've been doing that so far. That's why it came out as the first card, pile 3. But I think right now you're tempted, oh man, I just want to race through this. I want to get the heck out of here. I'm so done. I'm so ready to pull the thorn out. But it's be wary of taking risks. That's where your silence is going to serve you in this situation, pile 3. Okay, so choose silence and choose the path of safety over the path of risk-taking. Because I think it's possible in past lives that got you in some sticky situations that maybe didn't turn out so well. And that's why it's this life lesson in this particular lifetime of sometimes the best action to take or the best communication is a lack of communication or a lack of action. Okay. Sounds weird. Sounds like it doesn't make sense, but as I said before, sometimes silence is a message in and of itself. And then we have, a Page of Wands reversed. We'll talk about that in a moment. Oops, there goes the Fool. And then last but not least, we have, the Hierophant. Speaking of authority, in tradition as well. So pile 3. They're warning you against taking action or, communicating too quickly and trying to get past this bramble patch because it's potentially, and I say potentially because tarot tends to be a snapshot of a timeline that can change based on your actions because you do have free will. But they're warning you against those risky actions because if you take that risk, you're going to be blocked from potentialities, of being able to explore your ambitions more. I think this is what you're kind of excited about past this bramble patch, or thistle patch, I should say, is more freedom where you don't have to be so dang slow about the way you pick your way through this. You're I'm so ready to go forward with my creative projects. I'm so ready to go forward with my ambitions. What makes me feel alive. That tends to be what the wands represent in tarot because they're the suit of fire. Fire is creativity, willpower, ambition, things like that. Our confidence as well. But ironically, if you take that risky path to try to just race through it, that will get you less farther ahead than if you pick your way through slowly and take the safe path rather than the risky path. Okay. And 2, it's interesting, especially with the Hierophant here as the outcome. I think maybe the fear might be, because the Hierophant can be authorities in our life, as one interpretation of the Hierophant, right? It might be that part of what the bramble patch is somebody who is the thorn in your side, is someone that has authority over you. Okay. It can also represent you, in and of yourself being an authority figure in this situation. And what I mean, like, in relation to the rest of your cards, is it's like, when I'm hearing intuitively pile 3, and this might sound odd, but it's like, depending on the path you take from here, if you choose the path of safety and slow and steady wins the race, you will be the authority in the situation with the power. If you take the risky path, not only will you potentially miss out on these opportunities with your passions, your creativities, ambitions, etc., but someone else might be the authority then. It's almost a power struggle is what I'm hearing, okay? A power struggle between you and someone else, or you in a system or situation. And if you play it safe and play your cards right, you can be the authority instead of someone else having the control. Okay, and that's part of also why they're warning you against taking too many risks right now. And also maybe be more silent than communicative, right? And 2, a Hierophant can traditionally, well, not to repeat myself too much, but traditionally can represent tradition. It's about things passed down over time. It's about... it's part of why it represents the structure of society and authority in that way. So if that's the case, in the way that that might apply to you, pile 3, it's like, not only will you come out better in terms of the power struggle for authority, but it's like a return to a tradition that maybe this path so far, because of these thorns, so to speak, and I almost hear it's like the tradition is like the pace at which you were going. Like, maybe you're used to going through problems like this at a lot faster pace. Maybe you thought this would be overcome a lot quicker than you expect, like, than it has been or that you expected. But once again, it's just that message, pile 3, of, you know, despite you thinking potentially that if I rush through this, I'll get there faster, it's like you end up at a slower pace or like further behind in progress in the end. It's almost kind of like pile 3. We're going to use a metaphor with driving right now. Have you ever had a situation, pile 3, where you're driving in traffic, or, you know, if you've been in a car in traffic before, where you have somebody that is like trying to pass you, and they're trying to get so far ahead because they're just, I don't know, they got a rocket up their butt and they want to get somewhere really fast, and they're just frustrated and they're tired or whatever, and work sucked today, etc., whatever the reason is, right? And it's like they aggressively like pass around your car and like other cars, and they're like weaving in and out. But then eventually, despite them trying to like run roughshod over everybody, you get to a stoplight, and look who's standing right next to you in their car, sitting right next to you in their car, that person that thought that they were going to get so far ahead by speeding through everything. So who really made greater progress, pile 3? You or the other person? Well, nobody. Because you're both at the same situation. So despite, or not situation, I should say, you're both at the same location, stuck at that same stoplight together. So just because they rushed doesn't mean they made greater progress, right? It just means that they rushed and maybe frustrated people along the way, and potentially, you know, a higher risk of danger, of course, the faster you drive a car. So was it really the wise decision for them to rush in the end if they just ended up at the same stoplight that they would have ended up at anyways next to you? Okay, it's that kind of thinking. That if I go faster, I'll get there faster. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Sometimes it means that you just end up in the same place anyways, and it would have been wiser and less risky just to go the slow and steady, reliable pace that the Knight of Pentacles suggests. Okay. And I wonder, too, pile 3, if maybe that's been a bit of a tricky situation with you, not only in past lives, as I discussed, being an Akashic Records reading, but also in general in this life. Maybe you tend to be more impulsive. Maybe you tend to be a little bit more rash and risky when it comes to, you know, I want to make progress. I want this to go faster, okay? Maybe you're kind of a very, like, speed-oriented person, which is great when it comes to ambitions because it serves you well in that area. But sometimes it's okay to slow down and smell the roses and take in the view. Sometimes it's good to let go of the control of the reins to the universe and let the universe sort things out through your silence and in action rather than hasty action like that. Okay? So that's part of the lesson here with this Akashic Records reading. Let's look at your other oracle cards. We'll tie this all together. See if there's any like final messages from Spirit to you. So I guess overall, pile 3, this is kind of a sort of a warning reading, but also an advice reading from the Akashic Records. It's like your spirit guides are seeing this obstacle here in the future, and they're like trying to give you advice of like, if you went about this in the slower, more reliable way, or keep doing that if that's what you've been doing, that will, well, that was quite fast. That just kind of flew out. We'll take it. It's the dragonfly and the pansy with the element or the keyword of balance, right? Slow and steady wins the race. There's no need to go about this in an imbalanced way. The best way is to choose balance, which is interesting because you had justice reversed here, which, you know, of course, as we always know, justice holds the scales of balance in her hands. So pile 3, especially too, because I think it's not like you're wrong to want to move forward. It's not like you're wrong to be frustrated, because we have that justice reversed. That reminded me of that with that balance keyword. Like I said, it's like a system failing you or something not feeling right. And you're like, man, I just want to just run roughshod and get away from this injustice because it just makes me angry. Or like, it's just not fair to me. I want to get away from here because I want to get away from this injustice, which is totally understandable, pile number 3, but I mean, I hate to repeat so much. I won't repeat this too much, but with the balance card, it's like the similar message of choose the path of balance away from the injustice rather than the hasty path. Okay? That will help you gain the power in the situation, in that power struggle we talked about. That will help you find justice. And you'll get farther in the end anyways. Here we go. And you know, sometimes pile 3, when we do have a thorn in our lives, oh, look at that going forward. Speaking of cars and hitting stoplights, you know, as I was saying though, pile 3 before the card came out and I got distracted. Sometimes in life when we have thorns in our side, we tend to go fast, not even just out of like a feeling of I want to get away from the injustice, not just a feeling of, man, I just want to get through this painful part, but because of the pain itself, because we want to get away from the pain, which is totally understandable, pile 3. But at the same time, sometimes you have to be very slow and careful about the way you extract a thorn or a sliver from your skin. Because sometimes if you do it too impulsively, you just drive it in further, right? You ever have a sliver in your finger and you're trying to like pick it out? And you're like, oh man, it's right there. I can just get it out with the tweezers or whatever you might use. And then you just go so fast to get it out because you're sick of the pain, you just shove it further in and you're like, oh crap. It's kind of like that message, right? So sometimes even if something is hurting, understandably, and my condolences if so, pile 3, don't rush to pull the thorn out. Okay, and then of course we have going forward, which not only is a confirmation of what I was just talking about like, oh man, I want to get out of this thorn patch, this thistle bramble patch. Because you know, even when you look at the imagery of this card, it's like you go from this place of, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but it's foggy down here. But then in the future, on the path forward, it's like the fog clears because the sunlight comes over the hill and crests over the valley. And it's like, okay, now I can see. Right? Now I can go forward. You're almost there. It's a guarantee from Spirit that based on the Akashic Records, you're almost there at this point of going forward. Okay? You're going to make that momentum. Even if it feels slower than you want it to be. Okay? I'm trying to see if any other messages come out here, pile 3. 1 second. I'm going to ask intuitively for a moment here. It might be silent for a second. You know, it's odd. Pile 3, they're saying sometimes the best way forward is to stop and think about what we're actually doing. And I don't know how that's going to resonate with every single one of you. Feel free to weigh down in the comments down below, but stop and think about what you're actually doing. Okay, so I think that might be the final message of the reading. Let me see if there's anything else. I just make sure I don't want to miss anything. But yeah, I won't repeat it because a lot of this message has been kind of repetitive. Pile 3 of this, go slow. You'll still make progress. It's going to be okay. Don't drive the thorn further in. You'll be better in the end anyways if you choose the balanced, risk-averse path, right? And remember that silence as well, too. Silence is also going to serve you in this way. And I think, too, going forward might represent, especially being an Akashic Records reading, where past lives have come up. Where I think, every single pile today had this same message. Must be a collective thing. Where it's like this card is representative of, you've gone through this in previous lives, and it might not have always worked out, or maybe you didn't quite learn the lesson yet in the way that you're supposed to. But it's like this life with that going forward card. If you take this advice into account, then you'll move past that karmic lesson about rushing when things are painful or difficult. And that, in and of itself, is like an overarching going forward, not just in this life, right? But also in terms of your whole soul path when it comes to life lessons with your spirit. Okay? So don't just value it or see it as, okay, well, I'll take this advice, just to make sure that I get the better result in the end for me now. But think of it on a soul level of, this is also good for every incarnation I've been so far and my overall plan on a spiritual level as well. Okay? So you'll make that momentum. You'll make that progress. You're almost there. Okay? Just be careful about the way you go about it. Don't rush. That is your message for today from the Akashic Records pile number 3. Of course, most of all, I hope that you liked it and that it helped you and it resonated. And if so, please like the video, comment down below, subscribe, as I always say. And in our tradition, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye, pile 3.